guys, you're welcome to DSSG Nation. So if this is your first time watching a video from DSSG Nation, do make sure you subscribe and hit the bell button so we can notify you when I create any video. So today we are going to be talking about hyperthyroidism. So pick your paper and your pen and let's get started. Hi guys. Yeah, welcome back. So we said we are going to be talking about hyperthyroidism. Now, the word hyper here, as usual, it means increased production. So, and the word thyroid in this thyroidism is denoting the thyroid hormones. The thyroid hormones. So if you say increase, if you say hyperthyroidism, it means increased production of the thyroid hormones. And what are the thyroid hormones? We have the T3, we have the T4, and we have the calcitonin. So, majorly, hyperthyroidism is talking about the increased production of T3 and T4. Now, let's look at the causes of hyperthyroidism. But before that, let's talk about the physiology of the thyroid hormone. So, stay tuned. Yeah, welcome back. Now, we said I'm going to talk about the physiology of the thyroid hormone, how the thyroid hormone is being produced. Now, we said the hypothalamus within the brain. So the hypothalamus, which is located at the base of the skull, so is going to release thyroid releasing hormone. Thyroid releasing hormone. So it's going to produce thyroid releasing hormone, which is the TRH. So from the hypothalamus, the TRH is going to be produced, and then the TRH is going to act on what? On our vice president. I think you still remember that class. So it's going to act on the what? On the anterior pituitary. And now what's going to happen next? The anterior pituitary is going to release TSH, which means thyroid stimulating hormone. So the thyroid stimulating hormone is going to act on the thyroid. And then the thyroid gland is going to secrete T3 and T4. Now, let's talk about the action of this thyroid stimulating hormone on the thyroid gland. So, our thyroid gland, that's what we discussed in our last lessons. We said the thyroid gland is made up of follicular cells. So, like follicles like this. So, follicular cells called the thyroid follicles. So here are the nuclei rather. Now, on these very cells, we have what we call receptors. We have receptors on them. So these receptors are the receptors for the thyroid stimulating hormone. Remember from our mode of action of the hormone. So the hormone is going to bind on the receptor. So the thyroid stimulating hormone is going to bind on this receptor. So this receptor is called thyroid stimulating hormone receptor, TSH. Now I'm going to clean the board. So what's going to happen between this receptor and what will be the change that will occur within the follicular space rather. So stay tuned. So yeah, welcome back. Now let's say here are our follicular cells. So let's say these are our follicular cells. Our follicular cells. So we know it is going to be what? It is going to be spherical to form this follicle. To form the follicles rather. So to form this follicle. So there are the nuclei now. Now, we said on them we have receptors. And we said those receptors are called the TSHRH. So the thyroid stimulating hormone receptors. Now, if when hypothalamus, when it releases thyroid releasing hormone, the thyroid releasing hormone is going to act on the anterior pituitary. Then the anterior pituitary is now going to secrete TSH, so thyroid stimulating hormone. Like the anterior pituitary will send this messenger, the thyroid stimulating hormone, to go and tell the follicles to secrete T3 and T4. Now, this thyroid stimulating hormone is going to act, is going to bind with this thyroid stimulating hormone receptor. And now what's going to happen within this cell? Two things. The first thing is that this the binding is going to result into the first thing, which is production of thyroglobulin. Production of thyroglobulin. That is the first thing that will happen. So what is the second thing? Second thing is that there will be opening. There will be an opening rather. There will be an opening of channel. But which channel? That is the iodine channel. So the channel for the entry of iodine. So this place is going to open up, and to allow for what? Iodine that is going in the bloodstream. So iodine. So at the iodine within the bloodstream, they are going to enter into the what? Into the follicle. You know this place is your what? Your alveolus that contains the thyroglobulin. Remember the last class? So if you not watch that, I will drop a link ahead. Just go and check it. Now, this is going to produce iodine now. So iodine will be in the cell. So the combination of iodine and thyroglobulin is what will form your T3 and your T4. And that's why we used to say the other name for T3 and T4 is triiodo. That's where the iodine comes from. So a quick recap. When the TSH, when it's bind with the TSHR, the receptor on the cell is going to activate two activities. The first one is the production of what? Thyroglobulin by the cell. And the second one is that the capillary within the thyroid gland is going to produce iodine, the iodine that is going in the blood. So the iodine that is going in the blood at that time, they are going to enter the what? Enter these cells. So enter this cell now. Enter into these alveoli. So the alveolus. And the combination of iodine and thyroglobulin is going to lead to the production of T3 and T4. And that is how the thyroid hormones are being formed within our body. So, having established this knowledge now, let's go to the causes of hyperthyroidism. Stay tuned. Yeah, welcome back. So, what are the causes of hyperthyroidism? Now, the most common cause is Graves' disease. Graves' disease. So, in Graves' disease, what used to happen? Don't forget, we said we have our cell like this. So, the follicular cells. So, we have receptors on them. So, here are the nuclei. So, I said the thyroid stimulating hormone, the TSH, is going to bind with what? With this receptor. And that will lead to what? Two things. One is production of thyroglobulin, and the other one is the opening of channel for what? For iodine. And the combination of the two is going to give us what? Is going to give us the T3 and the T4. Now, in Graves' disease, our body is going to be producing, actually, Graves' disease occurs in female more than male, between the age of 20 to 40. So, it is a disorder that is characterized, that is associated or attributed with the female. So, now, when the person, when someone has Graves' disease, the body is going to produce some kind of antibodies. Some kind of what? Antibodies. So, and these antibodies, they are going to be giving a false message. Now, these antibodies, they are just like your sisters or your brothers at home. Whenever they want to play a kind of prank on you. Hello sister, mom is calling you. Or mom said you should go and wash the toilet. So you go and wash the toilet, but actually mom did not ask you to do that. So, this is what these antibodies are doing. The function of the TSH is to tell this receptor to enhance the production of thyroglobulin and open the channel for iodine. But the TSH is not there now. What is going to perform that function? What will relay that fake message, that fake impulse, is these antibodies produced in what? In Graves' disease. So the antibody is going to bind with this receptor. So telling the receptor to do what? To produce thyroglobulin. So the first thing will happen, production of thyroglobulin. And then the channel as well is going to be expressed. So the iodine channel is going to be open. And the iodine flowing in the blood will rush down into it. So it's going to rush down into what? Will rush down into the cell. So iodine. So an iodine plus thyroglobulin will give us what? Our T3 and our T4. And that is what? In the absence of TSH. So in Graves' disease, all these antibodies, they keep binding to the what? To the thyroid, the TSHR, thyroid stimulating hormone receptor. And that will lead to what? Increased production of thyroglobulin and iodine, which will spike up the what? The T3 and T4 level. So that is how Graves' disease can lead to what? Can lead to hyperthyroidism. So another cause for hyperthyroidism is what we call toxic adenoma. Toxic adenoma. So in toxic adenoma, the receptors now, these receptors, the TSHR, in toxic adenoma, they are going to undergo mutation. So they are going to undergo mutation. A mutation is just a kind of change. So their normal function is to respond to TSH. But in toxic adenoma, they are going to become mutated. They will just change. So they won't respond to TSH alone. They will also be initiating the impulse themselves. Like they will also be they will be disturbing our body cells. So they are going to be disturbing the follicular cells to do what? To produce thyroglobulin and what? And iodine. So, and in that, with that further, that is going to lead to increased production of T3 and T4. So what I mean is that in toxic adenoma, the receptors here, they are going to become mutated. So mutation is going to occur to them, they change. And when the change occurs, either the TSH is binding with them or not, they are going to be telling the cell to secrete what? The thyroglobulin, and they are going to open the channel themselves. So for iodine to come in. And that will lead to increased production of what? Increased production of T3 and T4. So what are the other causes of hyperthyroidism? So I'm going to clear the board and come in with at least 2 more causes. Then we'll rush straight to the pathophysiology. So stay tuned. You're welcome. Now we said we have other causes for what? For hyperthyroidism. And one of those causes is increased intake of iodine. So if there is increased intake of iodine, so it means there will be high amount of iodine in your blood. And so far there is high amount of iodine in the blood, so it is going to be what? It is going to be absorbed into the what? Into the what? Into the alveoli of the follicular cells of the thyroid gland. So naturally, increase in the amount of iodine within the alveoli is going to lead to increase in the rate of binding with thyroglobulin, and that is going to lead to increase in T3 and T4 production. So high intake of iodine can just do it. It can just spike up the level of formation of T3 and T4. So that is that of iodine. So other causes that can lead to hyperthyroidism. So other causes, we have a gestational hyperthyroidism. So the meaning of gestation is pregnancy. So in pregnancy, we have this very hormone that we use to ascertain that someone is pregnant, and that is what? HCG, human chorionic gonadotrophin. So what is the effect of human chorionic gonadotrophin on the receptor of the thyroid stimulating hormone? Don't forget, we said we have our cell, our follicular cell, with the receptors. So the TSHR, the thyroid stimulating receptors. So the human chorionic gonadotrophin, whenever it binds with this TSHR, she's going to tell it to do what? To produce thyroglobulin. So when thyroglobulin is being produced, she's going to also do what? She's going to express the channel of iodine. So the channel of iodine is going to be what? Is going to be opened, and then the iodine in the blood is going to rush down into what? Into the alveolus. So, and then the combination of these two will lead to increased production of T3 and T4. So this gestational hyperthyroidism, it is to subside after giving birth, because HCG is going to be reducing in blood like that. And that is that on the other cause. So let me just give us 2 more causes, and then we'll talk about the pathophysiology. So let me clear the board and come back with that. So stay tuned. So yeah, well done. So we are on the causes of hyperthyroidism. So I'm just going to give us 2 or 3 more causes. 2 more can lead to hyperthyroidism, hyperthyroidism, and so we can also have inflammation. Inflammation can also cause it. So and some medications too can also cause it. So talking about 2 more, remember we said the T3 and T4, the thyroid hormones, they are produced under the influence of what? Under the influence of TSH coming from the anterior pituitary. So if there is increase in the number of thyrotropes in the anterior pituitary, that means there's going to be increase in the production of T3 and what? And T4. So and that dates back to our hyperpituitarism. If you have not watched that, I'm going to drop the link up ahead, so make sure you check it. So apart from that, okay, I think we understand that quite well. So increase in the amount of cells in the anterior pituitary, that can do what? It can increase the amount of T3 and T4. So now the TSH coming from the anterior pituitary, it also receives its own impulse from the hypothalamus. I know if you get that. So and the hypothalamus is releasing what? The TRH, thyroid releasing hormone. So if there is a kind of tumor in the hypothalamus, so it means there is going to be increase in production of TRH, the thyroid releasing hormone. An increase in the amount of thyroid releasing hormone will lead to increase in the amount of thyroid stimulating hormone from the pituitary. An increase amount in thyroid stimulating hormone from the anterior pituitary will also lead to increase in the production of T3 and T4. I really hope you understand that until you don't understand it, just go and watch our hyperpituitarism. You understand well. Now, for the inflammation, so we said these are what? These are follicular cells. These are our follicular cells now. So our follicular cells. So and we have the thyroglobulin inside the alveoli. Now just imagine that this cell they become inflamed. So if they become inflamed, it means they are going to undergo inflammation and some will die. Now along the way, since they are dead, the alveoli is just going to release what? Its own thyroglobulin into the blood. So it's just going to release the thyroglobulin into the blood, and within the blood we have what there? We have iodine there. So the binding will just occur, and that is going to form T3 and T4 in the blood. So that is how inflammation can lead to what? Hyperthyroidism. So inflammation of the thyroid gland. So the follicles within it can just do what? Can just die. The follicular cells can just die, and when they die, they are going to release their contents into the blood. And within the blood, we have the iodine, and binding of this thyroglobulin and iodine within the blood will just lead to what? T3 and T4, leading to what? Leading to hyperthyroidism. And lastly, medication. A medication called levothyroxine. Levothyroxine. So if someone is taking a high amount of this drug, it means the mode of action of this drug is just to increase the level of T3 and T4 within the blood. So this drug itself contains T3 and T4. It contains thyroxine. So once you use it in high amounts, that is going to lead to what? It's going to lead to high levels of T3 and T4 in the blood. So these are the causes of what? Of hyperthyroidism. Now let's talk about the pathophysiology of hyperthyroidism. Stay tuned. Yeah, welcome back. Now, the pathophysiology of hyperthyroidism. We already know that in hyperthyroidism, there is going to be increase in the amount of T3 and T4 in the what? In the blood. Now, what will be the effect? Just remember that the normal effect of T3 and T4 is to increase metabolism, metabolism. And now, since there is increase in the amount of T3 and T4 that is supposed to increase the metabolism, it means there is going to be an excessive increase in the metabolic rate. And now, if there is increase in the metabolism of the body, the carbohydrates, they are going to be continuously metabolized, and it will lead to generation of heat. So that will lead to what? Generation of heat. But before talking about it, we know that metabolism of carbohydrate first will give us what? Will give us glucose. So there will be high amount of glucose in the person's blood. So and that will lead to hyperglycemia. Hyperglycemia. So a typical increased metabolism, excessive increase in metabolism will lead to what? Metabolism of carbohydrates, which will always give us what? Glucose. So increase in this metabolism will lead to hyperglycemia. And now the body wants to excrete it. So when the person urinates, the person is going to have glycosuria. Glycosuria. That is, glucose will be in the person's blood. I mean, in the person's urine. So apart from that, another thing is that increased metabolism is associated with heat. So there will be production of heat. Excuse me. So like there will be production of heat. So and this heat is going to do what? It's going to send an impulse. The receptors that are detecting this change in temperature, they are going to send an impulse to the hypothalamus, which is what? The thermoregulatory center of the brain, hypothalamus. So they are going to send an impulse to the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus in turn is going to send what? An impulse of vasodilation to the blood vessels supplying the sweat gland, and that is going to lead to what? Excessive sweating. Excessive what? Excessive sweating. So the person will be sweating a lot, and the eccrine gland, they are numerous in the palm of the hand. So the person can also have a sweating palm. So the palm of the person will be sweating. So there will be a lot of water in the person's palm. So it's a sign and symptom for hyperthyroidism. So after that, what do you think will happen? Since the body is constantly metabolizing glucose, the body is breaking down glucose, it's constantly metabolizing it. So what is going to happen? The cells of the body, they will have to go and pick their food, their source of sustenance rather, from the fat, their fat store. So the cells have to break down their fat, and in a process called lipolysis. So lipolysis is from the word lip, which is lipid, and lysis means breakdown. So since the glucose is constantly metabolized, so they are going to do what? They are going to pick their food from their what? From their fat stores. So the fat source of the cell. And when lipolysis occur, lipolysis is going to lead to one thing. One of those things is that the body will become acidic, because one of the byproducts of this process called lipolysis is ketosis. So ketones are going to build up within the body system, and the person can suffer from acidosis. Now that is even going a long way. So metabolism of fat, the fat is going to be lining the inner part of the blood vessels, and when it is lining the inner part of the blood vessels, this can also lead to arteriosclerosis. But actually, it would have gone a long way before this can set in. So still on a lighter mode, this fat, they can deposit behind the person's eye. So, and that will bring about a characteristic non-blinking eyesight. So the person will be constantly looking at you without being able to blink. Why? Because this fat, they have accumulated behind the person's eye, and they push the eye forward. So the eyelid of the person is not able to do what? It's not able to contain the eyeball anymore. So let me just quickly do a recap so that we can understand this better. Now, in hyperthyroidism, there is increase in metabolism. So increase in metabolism of glucose will lead to hyperglycemia, and from there, the body wants to excrete it. So the person is going to have glycosuria. The glucose is going to go into the urine. So the person will have glycosuria. And apart from that, we said metabolism is accompanied with generation of heat. And when there is increase in the amount of heat generation, we know that this is going to send an impulse to the hypothalamus. And when the impulse reaches the hypothalamus, in an attempt to regulate the body temperature, is going to send an impulse to the what? To the blood vessel supplying the sweat gland, and that is going to do what? It is going to increase the rate of sweating. So, and the eccrine gland are numerous at the palm of the hand. So the person is going to have a sweating palm. The palm of the person will be sweating. So it contains a lot of water. So talking about the metabolism of carbohydrates, like to glucose. So the constant catabolism, constant breaking down of glucose, will tempt the cell to go and produce their sustainer from their fat stores. So they are going to look for what? Food using their fat store. So and they are going to break down their own fat in a process called lipolysis. And lipolysis is going to lead to the production of ketones, which can do what? Which can build up, which can increase the acidity of the body, hereby leading to acidosis. So we're talking about acidosis some other time. So more breaking down of fat, the fat can line the inner part of the blood vessels and be storing in different body cavities. And part of that cavity is the orbital cavity. So behind the orbital cavity, if fat is accumulated behind the orbital cavity, what's going to happen? Those fat are going to push the eyeball of the person, it's going to push it forward. And that is what we call exophthalmos. Exophthalmos. So one of the causes of exophthalmos is that the fat can do what? Can deposit behind the orbital cavity, and then it's going to push the eye forward. So the exophthalmos is the characteristic on blinking sight that the person will be given. So the person is not able to blink the eye very well because the eyeball has protruded forward. So the eye is not able to contain it very well again. And apart from that, muscle weakness as well can also lead to that. So in hyperthyroidism, there can be muscle weakness because now the person's glucose is being broken down. So it is normal for the person to lose weight because the fat store as well has been tampered with. So what really makes up our body weight is the fat, the bones, and the likes. But majorly fat is part of it. But since the lipolysis is occurring every time due to metabolism, increased metabolism, the person is going to lose fat. So the person is going to lose weight. So all the muscles are going to be wasted. So the person will be very weak. And that is just the pathophysiology of hyperthyroidism. So let me just come in again with the pathophysiology. So we said there is going to be an increase in what? In production of T3 and T4. So we've discussed a lot of causes right here. So those things are going to do what? They are going to sensitize the TSHR, the thyroid stimulating hormone receptor, thereby leading to increased production. So when there is increased production of T3 and T4, that is going to increase the body metabolism. And when the body metabolism is increased, two things can happen. The first one is increased metabolism of carbohydrates, leading to glucose, and that will cause hyperglycemia, increase in level of glucose in blood, and that way the body will want to excrete it, and that will lead to glycosuria. So we said metabolism is accompanied with generation of heat, and when there is increase in body temperature, it means this person is going to have fever as well, as another sign and symptom, fever. So now the body wants to regulate it, so the hypothalamus is going to send an impulse of vasodilation, that is the blood vessel is going to expand, supplying the sweat gland, and that is going to lead towards excessive sweating. And when excessive sweating sets in, the endocrine glands are numerous at the palm of the hand, and that can lead to sweating palm. So we said later the cells, they are going to metabolize their fat, they are going to be breaking down their fats in a process called lipolysis, and that will lead to production of ketones, which can shift the body pH into below 7, which can lead to Which can lead to acidosis. And I said that is really not the point in hyperthyroidism. Now the point is that this fat can be deposited in different body cavities. Example is the back of the eye, so the orbital cavity, and then it's going to push It's going to push the eyeball forward, giving it a characteristic on blinking site called exophthalmos. So, and we still have a long way to. We can still talk about a lot of things. You want to continue following our pathophysiology trend, but let's advise you to stop it here because this video is long enough. So it means you've come to the end of the video. So if you really enjoyed this video, just make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if this is your first time watching a video from the DSSG section, do make sure you subscribe and you hit the bell button so we can notify you whenever we create a video. Signing out.